I think Druids must live there because there are these funky, strange towers. And then somebody told me, no, I think actually they're big old-fashioned bread ovens.
It is a very powerful spiritual site once you go on it.
It's absolutely amazing. It's like a totally different world. Yeah, I think that the people who live even right next door to it, they don't have a clue as to what's going on over there.
Well, the McMillan Reservoir Sand Filtration site is presently a historic landmark, a DC landmark. It is unique in the sense that it was the only slow sand filtrating water filtration plant in the United States presently. It is no longer in operation. Now they switched to chemicals in the early 80s. The slow sand filtration is the way the water is purified. It basically works like a large coffee pot, where the water is pumped into a filter that's halfway full of sand, and it percolates through the sand. And at the bottom of the sand, there's gravel. And once it percolates through the sand and the gravel, the water is drained out at the bottom, and you have perfectly pure water, the natural purified water. In fact, most experts to this day prefer that is the perfect way of purifying water.
There are these marvelous vaulted ceilings and archways, and you wend your way through, and there's something architecturally just magnificent.
The site was landscaped by Frederick Law Olmsted Jr., who is the same landscape artist that did the U.S. Capitol building. The firm also did the Central Park in New York. So when they landscaped this site, it was always a national significant site for the history of Washington, D.C.
It was part of the Senator James McMillan's vision to improve the city. Senator James McMillan was the head of the DC Commission, which was charged with bringing the city of Washington, D.C. into the modern age, yeah, because it needed to become a capital worthy of its name. And so he came up with what was called the McMillan Plan. And McMillan Park was originally conceived as part of a huge chain of green spaces that would ring the city. In fact, it was described as a necklace of emeralds.
The site was fenced off at the end of World War II in 1945. Before that time, the residents had open use of the site. It was a green space that they could go there, and many of the residents remember having boats that they floated along the reservoir. They walked around the site. There was a magnificent fountain that was on the site at the corner of First and Channing that was very large and very scenic. And many of the residents back in that time, in the 30s, they didn't have air conditioners. So a lot of the local residents would come and sleep on the site, take their family at night, because it was very cool on the site with the open space and the hilly nature of the site. So that's essentially the history of the neighborhood. Was very much involved with the site. And when they closed it in 1945, the federal government and the Army Corps of Engineers promised to reopen it as a park. But that never happened. When the war was over, they simply kept it fenced in, and the neighborhood never got their park back.
It was under threat of being quote-unquote developed. And I said, well, yes, sure, development, because we need jobs and we need housing and we need all these other kinds of things. But at the same time, we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
It really is important that people understand what we stand to lose. If the development or the destruction team comes in there with heavy equipment, this isn't an historic site that we'll ever get back.
There are many places in Europe that they have turned old industrial sites into wonderful, amazing attractions. And we have that opportunity right here in the District of Columbia. And if we were to throw that away, we are basically destroying a huge part of our legacy and our heritage and our history. And that would be absolutely criminal.